I wanted to tell you what happened immediately after the doors opened at the GeekWire Awards. Do you know who walked up to me? Robin Twyman. Do you know Robin?
Of course I know Robin. Robin's a longtime GeekWire member, the representative of the UK government here in the Seattle area, and an economic development wizard.
So do you know what he wanted to talk to me about? Robin came up to me. Of course, he's the head of the UK government office in Seattle, as you said. And the first thing he said to me was, big mistake. You should not have changed the London Calling headline.
Yes, no, he came up to me at the awards and told me the same. And I said, Todd doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
In general, this is true.
Yes. So he very much appreciated my desire to have London Calling in the headline as it related to Flying Fish and their venture capital investment that they made in a high-profile London-based startup.
And it was really a good reference too, in hindsight, because they had called upon London to network.
It was a great headline.
To network but look at all the legs we've gotten out of my mistake. Okay. Robin was not the only person with feedback on this. We also got a email from a listener by the name of Manu, who wrote in to the tip line pointing out that London Calling actually was not a reference to the Clash. Necessarily.
Well, historically, it's a play on, I think, a BBC broadcast during World War II and how they broadcast
to international
markets about what was going on, about the news.
A little bit of international outreach. That was their way of signaling, hey, this is London Calling, and here's what's happening from their perspective.
I'm obviously stuck in the 70s, like the late 70s and early 80s, which I got to say was a great era for music, in my opinion.
Yes.
But, I had the London Calling headline, and then, of course, this week, as we're going to talk about a little bit later on the show, was my Talking Heads reference.
Yes.
Road to Nowhere. So I don't know, maybe that's my shtick. Maybe I'm old. Yeah, well, I know I'm that, but I've got a new shtick in terms of how I'm getting into columns and my writing.
One way or another, I owe you and Robin and the entire United Kingdom my heartfelt apology.
Thank you. I accept it on behalf of all of those entities.
Hi, and welcome to GeekWire. I'm GeekWire co-founder Todd Bishop.
And I'm GeekWire co-founder John Cook.
We are coming to you from Seattle, where we get to report each day on what's happening around us in business, technology, and innovation. What happens here matters everywhere, and every week on this show, we talk about some of the most interesting and important stories and trends in the news. John, big show coming up.
Really?
Yes.
What are we talking about?
The Musk versus OpenAI trial heads to closing arguments. We're going to dig into some of the courtroom revelations, the Microsoft board memo, and explain why this case matters beyond the billionaire drama. Plus, is Seattle on a road to nowhere? Howard Schultz, a former governor, and John Cook all weigh in on whether the region is squandering its edge. How do you like that company?
I'm not sure how I feel about that company.
And later on, I've got a pretty good GeekWire trivia challenge. I've got a good one for you. This is a highlight.
I hope I don't get stumped again. I hope it's not GeekWire related, because I am
it's Microsoft
scoring very poorly on the GeekWire oriented trivia.
On a serious note, I have been fascinated, John, by the Elon Musk versus OpenAI versus Microsoft versus Sam Altman lawsuit. Closing arguments are winding up as we speak right now. And I got to tell you, I'm pretty torn on how this is going to turn out. Now, for people who have not been following this, Elon Musk is accusing Sam Altman and OpenAI and Greg Brockman, the OpenAI president, of a breach of charitable trust. Elon initially donated $38 million into OpenAI. No small sum for the ordinary human, but for the world's richest person, perhaps pocket change. This was back many years ago. OpenAI essentially converted into a for-profit, although there's still a nonprofit entity. And Elon is basically saying, hey, you took the money I gave you for a nonprofit and you enriched yourselves with that investment.
Well, they enriched themselves, but they did transition the nonprofit. I think it's pretty obvious that there's a new entity here that is very much nonprofits aren't getting ready to file for initial public offerings.
Correct. They created a for-profit or a capped profit, or it's gotten so convoluted.
It's so convoluted, but I think we've talked about this on the show in the past. I actually believe and understand the argument that Elon Musk is making here.
You do?
I do. I think because it does seem like it was a bit of a shell game. OpenAI, when it started, was truly a nonprofit, and it was to make the world a better place because of AI, right? And all of a sudden now it's one of the largest companies on the planet.
Yes.
So something changed.
Yes.
And it just seems like the intent changed.
I would love, obviously, to be a fly on the wall in that jury room. You've got two of the most polarizing personalities, not only in the tech industry, but in the world behind this, in Elon Musk and Sam Altman. And I know that there is a subsegment of the population that is not a fan of Elon, but I got to tell you, Sam Altman did not come off super well in all of this. And you actually pointed out one of the ways in which he kind of felt slippery on the stand. I was really interested in his comments about Helion, which is the Everett, Washington-based fusion energy company in which he was a very early investor. And it turns out he owns a third of the company. I don't know if this was actually new information on the stand.
I thought your story and reporting on that was very interesting.
But you pointed out something that he said. And the whole issue here is he's an investor in Helion. He was the board chair. And they have an agreement with OpenAI to potentially supply power to OpenAI for data centers in the future. Helion has an agreement with Microsoft. And the question was, relevant to the case, whether Sam Altman used his position at OpenAI to unjustly enrich himself by favoring this company in which he has a substantial investment. And there were many questions along these lines. But you pointed out something to me in Sam Altman's testimony that I think illustrated just how slippery Sam Altman can at least come across.
Oh, you're pointing to that quote that I pointed out. Yes.
Yeah. So their question was, what was the nature of this agreement? And he said he recused himself and anything. And then he said that OpenAI has never bought or received any power from Helion. And as you pointed out, nobody has received any power
They've
from Helion.
They've not even proved the technology that will ever work.
Yes. Small example, but the lawyer, I thought, for Elon Musk, Stephen Mollo, was most effective in his closing argument when he was reciting Sam Altman's responses back to the jury. Sam Altman really never gave straightforward answers. And then on top of that, you had all the recent reporting of the way he may not be totally upfront with everybody that he deals with, to put it charitably. And so I think that was one area that really stood out to me. I thought the Microsoft witnesses came off very well, actually. Kevin Scott and Satya Nadella.
They're not defendants.
Yes, they are. Absolutely.
Microsoft is also a
defendant. Yes, Microsoft
defendant.
is accused of aiding and abetting the breach of charitable trust. So Microsoft has real stakes in this case. In fact, their lawyer gave a closing argument. And Microsoft actually is trying to move forward on a technicality. One of their points is Elon Musk raised publicly on X or Twitter the issues that he had with Microsoft's investment in OpenAI several years ago. And Microsoft's contention is that actually started the clock ticking. And at this point, they're past the statute of limitations. He did not file the lawsuit in time. So Microsoft is basically saying, hey, all these other questions about whether we aided and abetted, and we say we didn't, but like the first question on the jury form related to Microsoft is whether this case is even relevant within the right time frame.
So could the jury find that Microsoft is not guilty, but OpenAI and Sam Altman are?
Yes, and I'm not sure if guilt
not
is
guilty,
the right term.
but
it's not a criminal case.
Right.
Whether they're liable or whether the claims against them are accurate, that's the question. This case is being watched very closely in the AI world, but I have to say it's also being watched very closely in the nonprofit world. I've heard from folks who are leaders of prominent nonprofits who are really looking to the outcome of this case as a potential precedent for the long-term flexibility of nonprofits and also the preservation of nonprofits, because one of the issues could be somebody could look to what Sam Altman and Greg Brockman and OpenAI did to move beyond the original charitable mission and say, okay, if this jury decides that these things were okay, maybe we should be pushing the envelope like that too and creating new profit-based missions around our nonprofit. And I'm by no means a nonprofit expert, but the things that I've been hearing are that this is being very closely watched as a precedent in the field. Of course, one of the cool things as a reporter about cases like this is suddenly you get access to all the internal memos. That has been so cool throughout this process.
What have you learned?
Well,
big picture.
Big picture. Microsoft knew that it had its back against the wall back in 2019 when they agreed to the initial investment with OpenAI. They were scared of what Google was doing after the DeepMind acquisition. And this was, in many ways, the OpenAI investment by Microsoft, a bit of a Hail Mary. And you can see that in some of the internal memos in the board report that Kevin Scott, the Microsoft CTO, and Amy Hood, the Microsoft CFO, wrote in 2019. Kevin Scott wrote that without OpenAI, Microsoft faced gaps in experience and talent that would make building its own artificial intelligence frontier programs time-consuming and risky. Microsoft needed OpenAI. And to me, it's kind of a fascinating pivot point, almost like a sliding doors moment, where if Microsoft hadn't done this, where would they be today?
Well, that's what I was thinking. A Hail Mary that worked.
It did. It did.
I mean, because you look at the stock price from 5 years ago to where it is today, and it's a significant increase.
Yes. So that
hasn't quite doubled, but near.
Right. So we're recording this podcast on Thursday afternoon. It's about 3:30 Pacific time. And here's my prediction based on listening to most of the closing arguments today.
Yeah, this podcast might not have any relevance because the jury might come back with a quick decision.
I doubt it.
I doubt it too, because it's a pretty complex case that went, 2 or 3 weeks?
Yes. And today they're finishing the closing arguments, and then I believe they're off on Friday, and then they start deliberating on Monday. So unless they go in and have an immediate verdict, I actually think that when you're listening to this show on Saturday or Sunday, the verdict probably will not have not come in. So here's my prediction. They're going to find that OpenAI did, in fact, have a breach of charitable trust of the nonprofit mission. I think it's less clear that they're going to say that Brockman and Altman unjustly enriched themselves. I'm not sure of that. And I'm pretty sure that Microsoft is going to get off without any issues based on what I heard. I think that's the way it's going to go. So put me on Polymarket.
But you never know. You never know, right?
Yes, you never know. So, but if somebody were to force me to go on to some kind of prediction market and put my life savings down, that's how I would do it.
How much of the case did you track? Like what percentage would you say that you followed?
I listened to about 30% of it. I mean, I got a lot of things going on.
Yeah. No, that's a lot. I mean, it's been going on for 3 weeks.
3 weeks, yeah. I didn't catch all of Sam Altman's testimony. I didn't catch all of Elon Musk's testimony, but I caught significant chunks and read all the coverage, followed all the coverage. And ultimately, you can think what you want of these people, but it comes down to the law and whether the jury finds that the facts meet the specifics of the law and the jury instructions that the judge gives to them. I think witness credibility is also really significant here. And I think one of the key questions is, whom do they believe or disbelieve more, Elon or Sam? And I think that's a very difficult choice to make.
It's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out.
All right. Look to GeekWire for more coverage on that. Let's talk about this place that we call home and where it's headed. Coming up next. Welcome back. It's Todd Bishop with John Cook. John, I read the Wall Street Journal opinion page quite frequently, and just to get a wide-ranging perspective on things. And I was surprised to see Howard Schultz, of all people, on that page this week. He wrote an op-ed saying that Seattle has turned hostile to the businesses that built it, citing issues including Starbucks moving jobs to Tennessee, Mayor Katie Wilson's what he called socialist rhetoric, and the legislature's emphasis on taxation over reform. And I got to say,
maybe not the best messenger.
I was going to say,
but the argument is certainly resonating, and certainly things that we're hearing from people beyond Howard Schultz. And I should say the reason he's not the best messenger is because Howard Schultz is largely hated in Seattle for selling the beloved Seattle Supersonics, and then shortly thereafter, the team moving to Oklahoma City. So his credibility in the community is low based on that fact alone, even though I think he made some good points.
I agree with you. He was not the best messenger. And in some ways, it feels like when Howard Schultz weighs in on things like this, he actually does more damage than benefit. Yeah, it's too bad.
Well, at this point, because he's already moved to Miami, it's like, what's the expression,
Don't let the door hit you.
Yeah, kind of. It's like, okay, well, you voted with your feet, and that's happening. I mean, We're hearing that from a lot of successful entrepreneurs and founders who are truly voting with their feet and leaving Washington State. So it is a real thing that is happening. That said, there are people that are still investing in the community and trying to work through the challenges that Seattle and Washington State are facing to try to make sure that this region stays prosperous and moves forward.
I know you have some strong opinions on all this. Give me your thesis on what's happening in the state, in the region. And
I have so many thoughts on this, Todd. And so it's hard to boil into one concrete thesis.
Well, we're on a podcast, so give it a shot.
we can riff here for a little bit. I think part of what's going on is a lack of confidence, lack of direction. And some of this is self-fulfilling now. It's like, oh, you start hearing, oh, this person's leaving, and now this person's leaving, and like Seattle sucks. Seattle sucks all of a sudden. And I just don't buy that narrative. Yes, there are challenges. Yes, things are happening that are a bit anti-business, to be frank. And that is causing some alarm and concern. But I would say don't throw the baby out with the bathwater on this. I always reference Northeast Ohio and Cleveland, where I'm from, and I mentioned that in the column as well. And like, you would much rather have the assets of Seattle than you would Cleveland, right?
Mayor Justin Bibb would heartily disagree.
I don't know if he would, because like he would look at the absolute the absolute riches that this community has, not just in monetary riches, but in natural resources and hydroelectric power and the immigrant workforce here. That's a very highly technical workforce. And you would say that's something that we want in our community. And so we have just such a abundance of riches, and the opportunity is so great in front of us that in some ways to see people just throw it out and abandon it at this juncture in this moment in time, I think is the wrong path.
One of the things that we've been hearing behind the scenes is that it's not so much the increase in taxes or the specific policies, it's the lack of predictability and the absence of a larger plan.
That's 100% the case. I think that's right. I think, and I can't tell you how many people that I talk to, and I'm sure that you talk to, when we're out at events or we're meeting with people in the business or the tech community, how often this is coming up. So one of the reasons why I wanted to write the column is because this is just on people's minds. I mean, it's something that almost everywhere we turn, people are bringing this up, and that is a component of the discussion that I think is important to remember. People do understand that taxes are part of the system. I think what has blindsided people is just an endless array of taxes that have come down the path in the last 12 to 18 months that have just kind of shell-shocked people with no direction, no ability to plan. And I think this is causing a lot of heartache in the business community as a result.
A reader sent me a video to Chris Gregoire, the former governor, speaking at the AWB summit, a Democrat, by the way, Chris Gregoire, a Democrat. And she said The state budget went from $33 billion when she left office to $80 billion today. And her quote was, "We don't have an income problem, we have a spending problem." She said the state hasn't had an economic development plan in over a decade. We lived on luck, and our luck has worn out.
Wow, that I did not see that, but that very much echoed components of what I wrote in the column this week. I think there is an arrogance in Seattle that this just naturally happens and we're going to be naturally great and companies and entrepreneurs just flourish here and it happens just naturally. Well, that's just not the fact of the matter. And if you go to places like Cleveland where they have to work their butts off to try to get economic development going, you'll know that that luck can run out. And I am concerned that we're not investing enough in our future and we're not thinking proactively about what the next generation of technology and innovation and business and jobs are going to be in this community. So that is a miss. And I agree with Chris Gregoire wholeheartedly on that. There's almost an arrogance around it that we just naturally think that this is going to happen here. Well, it's not, and especially in this world we are today where it's much more global in nature and companies can locate wherever they want. It's easier than ever to have employees wherever you want to have them. And so it's a risky game to be pushing businesses and entrepreneurs out of your region and waving goodbye to them.
I did an interview just this afternoon with TVW. They asked me to talk about Microsoft's history, and I really enjoyed kind of digging back into that project that we did last year. And it was just a reminder of how serendipitous it was that Bill Gates and Paul Allen ended up bringing the company here from Albuquerque. They were homesick to some extent, but they also decided that the culture and even the weather was worth being here. You know, they wanted the rain so that the programmers would be heads down, and they wanted to be in a place where people weren't job hopping like they necessarily were in Silicon Valley. But more than that, it was kind of a reminder of how one company early, you know, in the late 1970s could, for 45 more years after that, have this massive impact. And as we're having this conversation, I can't help but think about that, because it's like, what's the one company right now that would be representative of that kind of outsized impact decades from now? And have we lost it already? I don't mean want to be a doomer, but have we lost it already because of this whole dialogue? And to your point, it is very much a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is, because there are counterexamples. I run into a lot of folks who say, oh, if you're an AI startup, you got to be in the Bay Area. And, you know, you hear these entrepreneurs, and there have been a handful of companies that have moved there for a variety of reasons. But what they don't talk about, I mean, we've had a couple stories here in just recent weeks. A company called Armada, which is creating portable data centers for defense and mining and very hard to reach locations. San Francisco-based company. Almost all of their major hardware and software engineering talent is in the Seattle area. Over 130 jobs in this area. And so at the same time that you might be losing some startups to the Bay Area that want to chase their AI dreams, which I believe you can absolutely 100% do that here. And there are lots of examples of interesting companies, including many at the GeekWire Awards this past week, that are doing that. There are other companies that are still investing here and putting jobs here and still see the value of the talent that's here. There is a risk that goes away. And I think that's what people are worried about. But I just don't like this narrative that if you're an AI startup, you can't build it in Seattle and you have to go to the Bay Area, and every reputable AI startup is headed to the Bay Area. I think that is false, and there are counterexamples to it. That said, when you contrast Mayor Katie Wilson of Seattle with her comments about waving goodbye to millionaires and job creators from the state, and doing so in such a way that she obviously doesn't care about business creation in the region. And you can contrast that with San Francisco Mayor Daniel Lurie, also a Democrat.
Well, she's not a Democrat. She's a socialist.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, no, keep going.
You contrast that with San Francisco's Mayor Daniel Lurie. He's basically, and I've seen him speak. Actually, I saw him speak at the Dead and Company show when he was there, which I thought was super cool. He's in Golden Gate Park. There are thousands of people there. The mayor's there on stage.
Talking up San Francisco.
That's all he does. He's got the easiest job. Well, actually not the easiest because it is a hard job. Its basic message is we're back. We're back.
It's a city on the rise.
City on the rise. And like so much of being a politician in my mind is being the champion of your city. And I just hear that over and over. And so that's the self-fulfilling prophecy that you hear out of San Francisco. We're back. We're a city on the rise. We're a place where innovation happens. And you just hear that message enough from the top leadership down, and people start to think that and believe it. And now, obviously, there are things going on behind the scenes to make sure that it remains a viable economic powerhouse. And those things seem to be happening based on my visits to the Bay Area. And I would also argue things aren't necessarily as bad as everyone makes them out to be.
Here
Or in San Francisco.
I thought that your contrast between Katie Wilson, Seattle's mayor, and San Francisco's mayor, Daniel Lurie, in that piece was one of the most vivid illustrations of what's going on. And I don't know what else to say, but I cannot imagine anybody in the world of modern economic development willingly saying goodbye to proven job creators. That's all I got to say on that.
People do believe that, and our mayor has the support of those people. It's a different philosophy, and I don't believe that. I think that leads to a even more broken society if you don't have people working at living wages. Now, you could say that the tech companies have driven so many of the living wage jobs out of the community that there are no living wages here.
Right.
Anymore.
And it's also a very untimely time to be having this conversation when you talk about jobs, when you look at not only the layoffs that are happening with the big tech companies, but the way that AI is impacting the efficiency of startups and minimizing the need to hire out of the gate. It's a messy, complicated time, and I don't mean to be so simplistic about it, but I think it's obvious that the answer is not to say goodbye and screw you, which was the implication of those comments. I think it's really hard to take.
I agree. I don't know.
We're preaching to the choir.
We're preaching to the choir on this. Yeah. So I don't understand it. It's frustrating. That said, we still, despite all of that, have amazing resources at our fingertips. If we just tap into it and know how to move forward as a community, we'll be better off.
All right. I do have a good trivia challenge. So
I'm ready.
Let's lighten it up. We'll be right back.
Pop quiz, hotshot.
This is GeekWire's Trivia Challenge.
Wouldn't you prefer a good game of chess?
All right. Welcome back. Yes, it is that time. GeekWire Trivia Challenge. Microsoft this week just topped a leading cybersecurity benchmark with a new AI system that uses more than 100 specialized agents to work across multiple AI models to find software vulnerabilities. This is actually really super interesting. I'm sure people have heard of Anthropic's Mythos and the whole notion of what's happening with agentic AI and security. Microsoft's whole thing is that they're using multi-models. That's their approach. They're using multiple models, and they've found it to be far more effective. In fact, the system beat out single model rivals from Anthropic and OpenAI, and it found 16 of the flaws in Windows that were included in this week's Patch Tuesday. So for all the concerns about AI being used to find vulnerabilities by hackers, which certainly it is, it's also interesting as a defensive mechanism, and the question is which is going to win out. Here's my question. This tool that Microsoft released to find these security bugs is called M-Dash, M-D-A-S-H. What does M-Dash stand for, according to Microsoft? I've got a bunch of possibilities.
No idea.
So
no idea.
Multiple choice.
Yeah.
Multi-model,
So
multi-choice.
Microsoft has come up with the definition of
Yes.
M-Dash, not my traditional definition of M-Dash.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. It's not EM.
So I got to put myself in the mind of
yes,
the
and-
Microsoft marketing team here.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
all right.
And in fact, I'm glad you brought that up. It is not EMDASH. It is simply
Got it.
the letter MDASH. That is the acronym or nickname, I think would be a
Okay.
better way to
Give
say
me
it.
my choices.
A, Microsoft Defensive AI Security Hunter. B, mysteriously discovers all secret holes.
No way.
C, Microsoft actually doesn't stop hackers.
Oh, geez. Come on. All right.
D, multi-model agentic scanning harness.
Okay.
Well, I got two more.
Oh, my gosh.
I got two
oh,
more.
Jeez. Okay.
E, most dangerous AI system here.
Okay.
And F, multi-domain automated security hub. I know I gave you a lot this week.
That's
I
a
had too
lot.
much fun
That's
with
a
it.
lot.
Do you
Okay.
want me to give you them to you again real fast?
No, because I think it's either the first or the last one, and I'm going to go with A.
So A
Oh,
was
no.
Microsoft Defensive AI Security Hunter.
Yeah.
That would actually be a much better
I
name
like
than
that.
they came up with.
I actually like that. Okay. And I thought maybe the last one.
Multi-domain automated security hub.
Yeah.
No, not that one
Okay.
either.
So it's one of the bad ones.
It's multi-model agentic scanning harness.
All right. That would be my third. That would have been my third choice.
And it's classic Microsoft.
Yeah. So that was
D.
Okay.
D. So the answer
Yeah.
is D, multi-model. And the acronym is drawn from different letters cherry-picked from the beginning or the middle of the words. Multi-model agentic scanning harness. And seriously, why not Microsoft Defensive AI Security Hunter?
Yeah. Hunter, I guess, now that I think about it, they probably wouldn't put Hunter.
Harness. They're big on
Harness.
this notion of it being a harness.
Yeah.
So there you go. All right. And that's GeekWire's Trivia Challenge for the week. Thank you for listening, everybody. Thanks for your input. All complaints on the commentary in this episode go to john@geekwire.com. We'll be back next week with a new episode. Until then, I'm Todd Bishop.
And I'm John Cook.
Thanks for listening to the GeekWire podcast.